We're going to talk about that first year of sobriety today with Miss Heather, who is joining us. Heather is about 16 months sober, so she just triumphed this 1 year mark that can be elusive for some people and really hard to achieve. But this is going to be a fantastic conversation, just talking about the difference in that first year when you get over that hump and what it's like going into your second year and how do things change. And now that you've had some distance and looking back on that first year, what does that feel like and how do you see things differently? Those are all the things we're going to talk about. But to start, let's welcome Heather to the show. And Heather, why don't you take a few minutes and just tell everybody a little bit about you and your story?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with you. Definitely a big fan, and obviously part of the group that you have on Facebook. So a lot of good information out there too. A little bit about my story. I would say it started to get pretty bad about 7 years ago. So growing up, drinking in my house, it was normal. Everybody drank. Every party we go to, everything was surrounded around drinking. And I probably had my first drink at 14. And that was just because everyone else was. It wasn't like I felt the urge to drink. But back then I would drink and I wouldn't crave it. And it went on like that all the way through college, up until about my first child. And then things changed at that point. Like something happened where the way that I consumed alcohol was different. I felt that I had to have it to calm me down. And it really changed the outlook on how I drank. And then I had my second son, or my second child. And once I had him, it got worse and worse. Through this whole time, I still kept jobs, still have the same family, still haven't lost everything, but things did start going bad. Fights with my husband, police were called to my house, things that as a professional woman, I would never think would happen in my lifetime because I was always, quote, the good one and didn't have these issues. And so it got to a point, though, where I would wake up and have to figure out, when am I going to drink today? How am I going to get it in? And that would be my constant thought. And it blew up at one point where I finally got sick of myself. My husband was asking me to go to rehab. My family would say to me, this is ridiculous, you're drinking. And finally, I had an incident on a business trip where I looked in the mirror and I said, I cannot look at myself anymore and do this. And so I flew from the place I was to a rehab, went there for 30 days and really embraced the program. When I got there, I decided, never mind, I'm going to get out of this and just go home. And someone said a really good thing to me. They said, why don't you just try? All you have to do is try. If you really want to go home, you can, but let's just try it and see how it works for you. So from that moment, what someone saying that to me changed my outlook. And I thought, well, I did fly all the way here to try to get sober based on really hitting my rock bottom, when it impacted my job a little bit. That was my last straw. So I stayed, stuck it out, came back to my hometown. And the first thing I did when I got back, which my rehab suggested, was go to an AA meeting. Mm-hmm. And so fortunately, I did have some contacts here and I contacted them. And I was home at midnight on a Saturday night from my rehab. And then the next morning I was at a women's meeting. And so I just really, from that point, I tried to get sober for the past 4 years, 4 years prior to the 16 months that I have, and nothing would ever work. I wasn't ready. Mm-hmm. But then once I decided I was ready and came back and I just took direction, really. Instead of listening to myself, because my thoughts don't lead me to the right places or the right thoughts, and then I'll make excuses. When I finally just listened to what other people were saying and then still continued that, let's just try and just keep trying. And I kept saying that to myself. And then here I am now, 16 months sober. And I haven't looked back.
I did a whole episode about, are you teachable? And I think I talked about this in a recent episode too. One of the most important things in being teachable is just being able to take some direction. And that is such a challenging thing for addicted people. Like we are rebellious and obstinate. We are so stubborn. We do not like any kind of authority. Don't tell me what to do. Don't act like you know more than me. Like we really have a challenging personality in that way. And there's so much freedom in that too, when you really can let go of all of that drama and just take some simple direction. You know, it takes so much pressure off of you and thinking that you have to know all the answers and you have to figure out what to do. You really don't. Let somebody who's already done it lead the way for you and tell you the easiest way. Like I always say, I'm giving you the cheat sheet. Here's the cheat sheet, you know, from doing this for a long time. Would you say that when you got to rehab and you literally flew from one end of the country to the other, and when you got there, did you really think that you were going to turn around and get on a plane and fly home? Or were you just having a moment of like fear and panic, of course, because you had no idea what you were walking into?
I was very drunk when I got there. So that was one thing that, I decided that I was going to have my last hurrah on my way to the rehab, which I think a lot of
Mhm.
people probably do. So I obviously couldn't make a decent decision at that point, even if I wanted to leave. I mean, I didn't even know how to get here. So no. So I don't really think I thought I was going to leave. I think I was very overwhelmed with the fact that I left everything. I left my family, left my husband, left my kids, and just went to take care of me because I was not, I was taking care of them. It wasn't that I was, leaving my kids in the ditch and not
Mhm.
taking care of them and feeding them and all that. But I also wasn't 100% present with them. And so I figured at the time, I'd rather go and take care of myself and be a little less, hope I can get through this and maybe just this break. And going away, far away, was intentional for me too, because I didn't want to have where the kids want to come see me. And I just needed a full break. As I said, I was sick of myself. And so I had to deal with myself. And if I had to still be mom, wife, all of that, I don't think I would have taken advantage of the program. So, that point, I was serious about it. I did ask to go home a couple times, and they're like, "You're almost done.
Yeah.
Come on." And then finally, I was like, you know what? And it took about. I did take direction when they said just stay and try, but then I kept taking more and more direction from them. It's really a plan. When you end up going to a rehab, which I cannot believe I'm saying, I went. Again, I went to
Mhm.
rehab. It's so stigmatized. It sounds horrible, but really, I went to life school, is what I
Mhm.
call it, because I forgot how to live. My life was around, all I did was worry about how I'm going to get the next
Mhm.
drink, the obsession of that. And I forgot about things like fun things to do, like walking outside or just anything that is a simple pleasure. I forgot about because all I was worried about was how I'm going to get a drink, how am I going to do it and not get too drunk so my husband won't know, and how am I going to hide it? Just all the obsessions with it. It was so nice to finally be somewhere working on myself, but not having a drink to do
Yeah.
that. So
Super,
it was
super
very
smart
good.
to go far away for treatment. And this is something on the professional side that we talk about a lot. And it's not always the best idea, but oftentimes it is a good idea because you do need kind of a clean break where you can go and just focus on you and focus on learning how to live again and learning how to live a different way. And what I have found, if people are too close to home, like I always say, I want you to have no phone, no money, and no ride. That is the perfect treatment situation. Because if you're too close to home, a lot of times people will just obsess about leaving because all they have to do is walk out and a buddy can come pick them up or their spouse can come pick them up. So they won't even really invest in that treatment process because that obsession shifts to, let me get out of here. It's too easy. What would you say, looking back on your first year, what would you say was really your greatest challenge?
Well, I think my greatest challenge was I came back to a lot of the triggers, so, a lot of people, I've seen some people sometimes on your Facebook page that talk about going back to the same place or doing that. Well, I didn't really have a choice. I mean, I have a
Mhm.
family, so I couldn't just decide, well, now that I'm sober, I'm going to just forget everyone. There was still responsibility that I had here at home and to my husband and to my kids. So I think it was difficult. They were great they were much better than I thought they would be when I came back. We actually had some discussions with them before I came back in the house about how mom's going to live now, and that I need her support, that their dad supports me. And so we were able to do that in a healthy way, which normally any other conversation before that was
Mhm.
never healthy. It was, I was either was over my drinking or whatever was going on. So we were able to have that conversation. So I came back and it seemed a little bit easier to kind of ease back in. And they just wanted their mom back. They didn't care as long as I wasn't drinking and as long as they could have me around. That's all
Mhm.
they wanted. So that was easier. I'd say with my spouse, a little more difficult based on there's I would look at things about him and I'd say, well, he needs to stop drinking. He needs to stop doing this. He needs to, in my mind. And then when I would sit back and think about it, it would, it's not my business. There's nothing I can do about what he's doing. But at first I was like, so unfair. How dare he tell me not to drink and then he's
Yeah.
drinking?
Yeah.
A very, very selfish outlook on it. I mean, if he wants to do what he's going to do to himself, that's his choice. And I think I choose not to drink. So that's my choice. And I had to make that decision, but it doesn't mean I have to be mad at everybody around me who's still
Right.
partaking, even though, and I know everyone who drinks and everyone listening to this pod will think, I had to quit drinking or I did it, what this person should, but you can't, if you take yourself out of the equation of thinking about what others should do, it's much easier to live. If I don't do that, that's when I would get frustrated at first that he would be drinking or he'd say, is it okay if I have a drink? And I'd be like, what do you think? No, it's not okay around me because I'm used to drinking with
Right.
him. It was a big change for me with him. And so I had to accept that it's a beverage and I'm not having one. And it doesn't mean I can't go and do things. So I think it'd be the adjustment back with the family and then also trying to kind of get back socially with people that I knew from the past, which I finally made a decision. I don't have to do that right away. If I don't want to go to a party or see people, I don't have to do it. And I don't have to make an excuse about it. I can just, if I feel comfortable going to something, I go. If I don't want to go to something, I don't. Because a lot of times I would just do stuff because people wanted me to. And I didn't really want to go anyway. I didn't want to go even when I drank, I didn't want to go sit around and drink. So it depends on what the venue is now if I decide if I'm going.
It's such an important point, too. You don't have to go. Many of us have some people pleasing stuff and codependence, and we like to say yes and we want to be a part of, and we like being invited and being included and all those things. But that is the truth, dude. You don't have to go. If you're not comfortable, it is perfectly okay to say no, thank you, maybe next time, whatever.
And that's one thing this time I was very selfish about getting sober, about what I would attend, what I wouldn't attend, business stuff. If I had to do it, it was only if it was mandatory. There wouldn't be any more of this, I'm going to go out for happy hours or that kind of stuff. I mean, it was very a different life. And it was very empowering because instead of me doing things I didn't want to do or putting myself in ways that would trigger me, instead of being angry about it, just don't do it. I'm an adult. I'm allowed to say
Yeah.
no. So that was a huge thing for me because my mom's really big on, well, come do this, well, come do that. And I'm like, no, that doesn't sound fun to me. And she's like, well, why not? I'm like, because I don't want to go to New York City and go to bars and all the people there pre-COVID. Because the day I was supposed to come back from rehab, she actually wanted me to go to New York. I was supposed to go to New York with her actually. And I said, I can't do it. And she's like, well, we don't have to drink. Mom, it's not, you
Yeah.
don't get it. Like, I cannot, I'm changing my environment. And so for me right now, I just have to say no because I'll be upset the whole time. And I figure at this point, if I'm not going to drink and I feel better, and if I'm not going to be happy going somewhere, why do I have to do
Yeah.
it? It just makes other people unhappy too. I mean, there's just some choices. So, I mean, things you have to do, I think, I do those, but if I want to leave, I leave after I do my duty. But it's kind of like what they say in the book and all that. If you go to AA, they say that. And I never thought about it until I started doing it. And nobody's ever said to me, how rude that you didn't come. No one says that. So as long as you're not mean about it, I just say, no, that I can't today.
It does, on a certain level, feel selfish, I think, but really it's more about being intentional. And people don't really understand what that means. Like, it's such a buzzword now, be intentional. But what it means is that I am very careful in the choices that I make, in how I spend my time and who I spend my time with. And if I have one extra hour in a day am I going to choose to do something that's enriching to me and something that makes me happy? Or am I going to say yes to doing something I have no desire to do? I'm going to be intentional and I'm going to choose the thing that's good for me or allows me to be comfortable, especially in early sobriety. Like that's just protecting yourself. So fantastic too. You said that's empowering. It's so empowering to take care of yourself and make smart choices for yourself. That's self-love. And that's something we're really not used to when we get sober because we've been so mad at ourselves for so long and disappointed and all those things. And I want to talk a little bit about your relationship too, because this is something that comes up a lot when one person gets sober and the partner doesn't. And how do you manage that? Like, how do you navigate that in your home with your spouse? Like, what has that been like?
Well, he's been supportive in a way that we don't have any liquor in the house anymore. We just don't feel we need it, and so that's helpful to me. So it's not sitting around. It's not that he's changed some behavior with that, but he does. He'll go out, and there'll be some times when he, like we all did in the past, that limit. Where you kind of have a little too much, and then I can tell and smell it. And so what I'll do now is he knows I kind of set a boundary with him that if I smell it and he's acting a little bit different, I'm probably not going to be around him just because alcohol smells disgusting to me now. It's so weird. Like I never thought I would think we were at a dinner a couple weeks ago we took my daughter to college and everyone was having wine and it was right next to me and I thought I'm going to throw up. This smells horrible. And red wine was my thing. I love my red wine. And so it's just interesting. So I just kind of scooted over a little bit and just said, it's just a smell. It's just like a smell of fish. It's like that. Just think
Yeah,
of it that
yeah,
way. This a smell that I don't like. And so yeah, so I think we just, the drinking, he's stopped doing what he used to do. We don't have liquor in the house. He's been supportive in that way. But then if we go to a party or something, he may have a drink there, or he may have a drink when he's golfing or doing something like that. But for the most part, I think that's how we've handled it. And I've definitely appreciated that because he, it could have been different where he's like, well, I'm still drinking. I don't care if you're going to stop and I'm going to drink around you or on the couch. And he was getting away from that before I went crazy on my drinking. So it's been helpful with that. But there are moments still where he'll come home and he's drunk and I'll be like, this is not going to
yeah,
work for me. So I think I told you I bought AirPods. That was kind of my gift to myself. And so when I'm upset, I'll put the AirPods in and just drown
yeah.
everybody out because they're noise canceling. And then that way I can listen to what I want to listen to. And the whole family kind of knows now if I put the AirPods in and I don't answer you, that means that I don't want to talk to you right now because I need to just calm down and not get angry because half of what I'd be angry at when I think about it later, it wouldn't be
Right.
big. It's nothing to get mad about. It's me taking on something of someone else. And when I do that, that's when I get
Yeah.
mad. And so if I can just do something else to change my thoughts, then the AirPods work great.
I love too that you said you had to catch yourself like not focusing on him and his behavior so much because that's huge, right? I mean, that's exactly what we do. We are wired to always look outside of ourselves, and that's really what recovery is about, is getting back to self-awareness and really knowing who I am and how my behavior affects people around me and how my choices create my life, right? And just learning to be smarter and all of that stuff. But if you get mad about these things with other people and you're constantly thinking about what other people should be doing or what you want them to be doing or how they're not doing it the way you want them to, what that does is creates resentment. And when you get angry and resentful, I mean, your life and sobriety are really at risk at that point.
I would definitely agree. I mean, that's when you talked about triggers earlier about coming home to triggers. I mean, I think a lot of it was, I'd be resentful of my husband at X, or I'd be resentful of him about this, or I think a lot of couples, you're raising a family and most couples work. And so I think there's just a lot of dual, parenting that's going on, both people working, there's a lot going on. And so I think the resentments start to hit and then you think, oh, well, if I drink, I'll feel better. Well, yeah, for a bit. And then that maybe works for you, maybe doesn't. Didn't work for me, obviously, for long term. But I think now I could pick apart anybody right now. I mean, and I'm so, I've been sober for this long. I mean, I could look at you and say, well, if you weren't doing that or this, then maybe you would be better at this. But that's not my place to do that. And so when I get in that mode, I know that I need something. And I call them
Yeah.
supplements. I need something. Like I'll listen to a podcast of yours, or I'll go to a meeting on Zoom, or I'll put my AirPods in and do so. I got to change the focus of what I'm thinking, because
Yeah.
when I get into stinky thinking like that, it's not good. And there's something going on with me. There's some anxiety within me that I can't control for some reason. And that's when I start picking everyone apart. And
Yeah.
it does cause the resentment, and then you just can't win with that. You're never going to win, and your brain isn't going to win.
When you're picking other people apart, right? When you're judgmental, judging other people, how we say in 12-step programs, taking other people's inventory, when you're doing all of those things, really all it is, gossip is the same way, right? Because you're typically gossiping in a negative way about other people behind their back, right? All of that really is just an indicator of how bad you feel about yourself. It doesn't really have anything to do with whoever you're talking about or whoever you're kind of tearing down, because you only notice negative things in other people when you're focused on negative things and negative things in yourself, right? Like, and I learned this the hard way because I used to be a super judgmental person, and I didn't even realize it. And I was at work one night bartending. This is a few years before I was sober. And I'm like talking across the bar, and the bar where I worked was all regulars. I'm like talking across the bar and we're laughing and whatever. And one of my regulars was like, God, you're so judgmental. And I was like, oh, I am? Like, I'm not even sure I understood what that meant. But once I did have an understanding of what that meant, I realized I was like, oh my gosh, I'm absolutely judgmental. Like anything that came up, I would have some judgment on it was good or it was bad, or I would never do that. And once I recognized that and I started to change and eventually became a comfortable, confident adult person, once I got healthy, I realized that all of that internal chaos and drama was just about my own insecurities and how badly I felt about myself.
I agree. I think that when I changed my thinking from, a woe is me thinking to solution based or fact based thinking, that changed everything. And
Yeah.
it's changed a lot for my kids, for I think even my husband, because there are a lot of times they'll be like, well, so and so. And I'm like, well, do we know that's true? Is that a true fact?
Yes. Right.
Because, how do you know that person said that about you? Because, my daughter, she's just got out of high school and is going on to college now. And a lot of the they're like, well, this person, they think this about me. And I'm like, well, do they say that to you? Because, a lot of with the younger generation, I mean, it's all phone, it's all
Yeah.
technology driven. And so, and she'll say no. I'm like, well, until you have the facts, you can't make a judgment that that person does think that about you. Or if you want to really know the truth, ask the person,
Ask for sure.
ask for feedback. Because I think then I think when I was drinking, I think, oh my God, everyone in the world knows I'm drinking like this. Oh God, all that stuff. But now, I mean, it's either, is it true or is it not? I mean, of course, we're going to have our feelings of how we feel about things. But when I stay in solution based, fact based thinking, like, how am I going to solve this versus, oh my gosh, this COVID, we're all going to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, some people are going to die, but how are we going to move forward? Not futuristically, the whole world's going to be, people are just
Yeah.
going, one extreme to
Future
the other.
tripping. Yeah.
Yeah, future. And I think that honestly, if I wouldn't have been sober, like right when this happened, it helped everything for me, because I could have gone one
Yeah.
way. I could have started drinking again, or I could
Yeah.
have done this. But I think for me, I was like, well, that's not an option. The option is, how do we get through this? And so, because my brain has
Yeah.
been reprogrammed differently through different things I do.
I'm so solution focused. Like the solution to me is really fun and exciting and invigorating. And I love that. The problems to me are just so boring, right? Because there's an endless amount of them, right? We all have problems, whatever. Like, we're going to have problems. It's just the nature of life. We've all got them. They're not going away. There's always going to be a problem, but I want to be in the solution. And that's also in that mindset, which you've talked about a couple of times, in changing your thinking, right? If I want to sit and obsess about the problem, then yes, I'm going to feel like crap because I'm obsessing about the problem and all the
Yeah.
negative aspects of whatever the problem is, which is going to cause anxiety, and it's going to cause resentment, and it's going to cause me to be mad at myself or beat myself up for making crappy choices, whatever the thing is. When your energy is in, you're obsessing about all those negative things, it just creates more negative. Where instead I can go, okay, I'm here and I want to learn XYZ from this situation, right? I shouldn't have said that like that. Maybe I could have been kinder. I shouldn't have raised my voice, or I need to make amends, like whatever the thing is. And then let's move forward, because all those feelings too, feelings are just feedback. Feelings are there to show you what you need to work on and what you need to give a little attention to. They're not bad or good or anything. It's just feedback. I say the same thing about failure. People like to say failure. I don't even like that word, but it's just feedback. That's how you learn what doesn't work, so you can go back and do what does work. But that mindset is so important in making sure you're focusing on the correct thing and getting the solution as fast as you can, because the problem is not going to get you anywhere. It's just going to make you feel worse and drain all your energy.
I agree. And I think breaking stuff down like simply, because I know when I had a really good therapist when I first started the journey of really getting sober. And she would really help me to think about things like, don't think about like everything you're working on is going to be little pieces. Like, make it 3 things that you have to do to stay sober. And then, okay, now you have 10 or whatever. But I think
Right.
a lot of times when people think of not drinking anymore or not doing this, it's like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to not drink again? What about my daughter's wedding? Okay, well, my daughter just got out of high school. Maybe she won't even get married. One of
Yeah.
my good friends always says that in a meeting. She'll say, well, what if my son doesn't get married and I can't, I didn't have worry about not having a drink for nothing. So, I mean, we
Right.
can't think. So if you think of it in little steps, like I'm going to do these things to get to point A, the next, it's not so overwhelming. So when I work with people now, because I have some women that I work with, I'll say there's 3 things they have to work on. Number
Yeah.
1, number 2, number 3. And then every time they text me, I'm like, tell me the 3 things. And that's better than, because I think if we get to, now we got to go to step 7 right now. I mean,
Right.
let's
Right.
just stay in like, stop drinking first.
Yeah,
And
right.
then we'll
Yeah, you're
go.
exactly right. Like, we love to think big picture. We love to think about the last step that is all the way over there, like 100 steps down the road. And this honestly is what trips people up in every area of life. It's the same thing in entrepreneurial world. We talk about it. You're in the professional world. It's the same thing for everybody. You want to think about the big picture and get freaked out and overwhelmed about, oh my gosh, how am I going to do that big thing? That you forget you've got to take 1,000 little bitty tiny steps before you can get anywhere near that big picture. And we forget about all the little steps, and then we don't take them because we get so freaked out about the big picture. It's like, just do the next thing. That's all. Just do the next thing. That's all you have to do. Just get started.
Yeah.
So what would you say has changed? Now you're in your 2nd year. What feels different for you?
Oh, a lot of things. Let me think of a few. I think I feel a lot more in charge of my life in general. I mean, I'd say that's the number one thing. I make the decisions on how I'm going to feel. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
So, because nobody can make me mad,
Yeah.
nobody can make me react how I do. That's all on me. And so I think I feel no matter what's happening, whatever the situation is, like I've gotten through so many bad things and I have not drank and I still can't believe it. It's
Yeah.
just because I practice a lot of pausing, a lot of
Mhm.
thinking. So I think in the past, like when I was drinking, it was very impulsive behavior. It'd be, well, I'm gonna leave this family and I'm gonna do what I want. And now it's like, okay, calm down, sister. Now, no, you're gonna calm down, take a pause, put your AirPods in. That's a big thing I do. And then think about how you're going to react to the situation. And so I think not being impulsive, also thinking before I speak or trying to. I'm not perfect. I'm a human. We all make mistakes, but I think it's just, I feel like I can do anything I want to now.
Yeah.
I don't have to drink. Like, it's weird.
Yeah.
I still say it all the time. Like, that I've gone through the pandemic. I got a new job during this time, the job I really wanted, and knowing that I deserve and I can do it, but the confidence back to be able to go after it because, I don't have to worry about
Effing it
drinking.
up.
Yeah, because there's that or just in general, like, I feel like, with the drinking, I was holding myself back from so many things because, not speaking up how I want to, not presenting myself how I want to, and that's such bullshit. And,
Yeah.
now that I don't have, it's like the armor is off. I mean, I'm who I am, and the qualities that got me to where I was before I went, I call it wackadoo and went nuts and drank myself to death or almost tried to, that's changed in this amount of time. And it just took a little bit of like reprogramming,
Mhm.
for,
Mhm.
of my thinking, because like you said earlier, I mean, all it takes is like when you're, say you want to do step work, step isn't for everybody, but taking it slowly, not being so impulsive, because I think you're in the middle of trying to get sober and then something happens and you're like, well, F this, I'm going to start drinking. That's going to solve it. And then everyone always comes back and they're like, why did I do that? Now I just messed up all this stuff. So I think it's, living in the moment, living day by day too. That's changed too, because I would think, oh, I would worry and worry about things that are going to happen in 2020,000,
Yeah.
and you can't, I got to live each day. And
Yeah.
so, and I know it sounds like a cliche when you say that, but if you really do live each day, then you're not going to be stuck in the mindset of like what's going to happen in a week or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Constantly worried.
Yeah.
And that choosing your reaction, I think, is huge. Not being impulsive. Like you said, taking that moment, put the earbuds in, AirPods, whatever the heck those things are called. But just take a minute. And I always think of it like, especially if something happens that like strikes a chord in me where I can get mad, because I can have a really bad temper. That is a battle for me. So if something hits that chord where I can feel myself getting mad, I definitely have to pause. And I always think like, okay, how do I want this situation to go? Like, how do I want this to turn out? Not just me freaking out and making an ass of myself, but like, really, like, how do I want this to go? And when I can keep it in perspective and think, okay, well, this is someone I really care about, and I don't want to be mean for sure. And I don't want to be arguing. I don't want to be in a fight. I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want my feelings hurt. So how can I come back and make it go the way I want it to go instead of blowing it up and making it a huge production?
It's huge because then I mean, I think all the work that I've done, I don't want to ruin it on a freak out.
For
It's
sure.
just stupid.
Yeah.
And if you look back on what things you would have done in the past or just life, how you thought about it in general, I mean, half the things that we're mad about had no significance
Yeah.
to anything.
Yeah.
And it's caused more stress in our lives than it needed to, when we could have just shut up and listen or not react, and maybe things wouldn't have gone the way they did. I know for me, in some personal situations with my husband, some of that stuff that happened during my drinking would have been avoided if I would have just maybe listened a little bit more,
Right.
uh, or he could have listened to me too. I mean, but goes both ways. Relationship has two things. But another thing that I have learned to do better this year is make amends quickly to people.
Yeah.
So, because not that I wouldn't say sorry to people, but even people like my kids, like, they deserve an amends too. Even
Mhm.
if if I reacted badly to my son or my daughter for the way, if they're mad and acting out or whatever, and the way I show up, if I act like a jerk, I say to them, I am sorry that I did that. And it makes a huge difference with them. And
Yeah.
because they don't need a mom who's yelling, screaming. We all have our
Right.
moments,
Right.
but I think I'm quick to like point out my fault. Like, I did this and you didn't deserve to hear that. Or whether you want to accept it, I can't make you, but at least for me, it's helpful to me, but I also think it for the like kids, it's more helpful. And then to a spouse, it just shows them that you do care and that
Yeah,
I
well,
do.
it's emotional maturity. And I absolutely love amends because number one, most people don't do it, right? Most people get really insecure and think if they say they're sorry or make amends, it's like they're weak or something. There's this whole weird thing about saying I'm sorry. And the other thing I study a lot is relationships and communication, interpersonal relationships. And this is such a big thing that I used to hear in my private practice all day, every day, couples, nobody wants to say I'm sorry. And what's so strange to me is when you make an amends, and when you really own your own nonsense and you make an amends, people have so much respect for that. At the same time, you're showing the other person that you value them, right? And to me, that's incredible. Like, that's what I want to do. I want everybody to know I value you. You are important to me. So, yeah, of course, I'm going to step up and say, I effed that up. I shouldn't have said that. I should have acted like that. I could have been more patient, whatever the thing is. It's not about being right or wrong. And that's where I see people get really attached to not making apologies because they feel like they're saying that they were wrong. And it's like, it's not about right or wrong. It's just about owning your part. I'm not apologizing necessarily for what I said or for my point. I'm apologizing for me, probably for my delivery, because
Delivery.
I can definitely be a little abrupt, we'll say. But I could just own my part, right? It's not saying that I didn't mean what I said. It means that I could have said it in a better way, in a kinder way, in a more mature way, whatever the thing is. But there is so much, people love when you make amends. You get so much respect for that because it takes such a big person to be willing to do that.
And I think for those listening too, if you're in a situation with a spouse who won't take the amends, like say they're acting like they won't take the amends or whatever. I mean, I think we still, for us to stay sober, if you've done something, like I think it really helps for you to at least, you have to at least try to give that amends. It doesn't mean that they're going to accept it or want to accept it, but that might have something to do with them and how they are showing up and, in communication and everything. But at least for you, like you as part of the relationship are trying to go back and make the amends of what your part was, like you said. And then if they don't want to accept it, then they don't, but at least you've tried. Because I think that's, like you said, that's maturity, emotional maturity to be able to show up and say, I was wrong. I said
Yeah.
that completely, it was completely out of line.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all this stuff, like, comes after you're sober too, that life happens, life's still going on.
Yeah.
And,
And
and
it's
things,
okay. It's totally okay to make mistakes and to have a moment where you flip out for a moment. It's okay to make mistakes. The important thing is that you come back and clean up the mess you made. Like, I don't expect myself to be perfect all the time by any stretch. I do expect myself to be able to step up and own my stuff and apologize when it's necessary, because it's not about how the person receives it, right? Especially if they don't want to accept your amends. It's not about the other person. It's about me being willing to take responsibility for my own actions. It doesn't have anything to do with the other person. It's about me owning my stuff. That's the important thing. So I have to make that effort, and I have to be willing to make that effort.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the point, owning your own stuff. Because I think when we're in the addiction, and obviously we all know that the drink's not the only problem,
Hmm.
there's a lot more that follows that or is in between that. But I think owning your stuff is again, the empower word, but
Hmm.
where you stand with people, where you stand with yourself, and you have nothing to drink over. I mean, I know that
Yeah.
sounds, or nothing to feel shameful about or
Right.
bad about, or, I'll even do it with, I have a team of people that work for me. And if I do something wrong, I'll be like, listen, I want to let you know. I don't say I'm going to make an amends to you, but I'll just say,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to let you know that what I did that wasn't right. And they're always appreciative. They're like, well, thank you for, even in the workplace, I think it's good because, as a manager, we can't be perfect either, just like a
Yeah.
friend or mother, spouse. So yeah, I think it's
Yeah, I just had this one of these conversations at one of my sober living houses the other day too, and it was simple. It was just I was like, "Hey, listen, I didn't feel good about how that exchange went. I don't feel like I really said it the way I wanted to say it. So let me explain myself because I'm not sure if I made you feel bad. That's not what I wanted to happen." But yeah, it doesn't have to be some big dramatic weird thing. It just it can be very simple.
exactly.
Okay, last question, favorite question. What is your favorite thing about being a sober person?
Favorite thing about being a sober person, I would say, is that the control factor of always being in control of what's going on. So, I mean, not control like, I'm going to control the universe and this is going to happen, but at least I'm in control of myself.
Yes.
So, I think I'm able to look at situations differently than I ever would have before. I'm able to relate with all different types of people differently than I would have before, all due to being sober in this process. And I think I don't have to I don't have to cause any more drama. Like it's anything I do now is not going to cause any more drama to my family, drama
Right.
to my workplace, or even myself. Like I don't have to worry about things anymore because I know what I've said, I know what I did, and I, keep up with what I need to do to stay sober. So, some of that is AA, and then I call it like vitamins. I call you a vitamin. Your podcast, and I just tell people I sprinkle a little bit of this and a little bit of that,
Yeah.
Reiki, and everyone's got to find what works for them. But I just feel like I really own, I own my stuff, and I don't have to ever. If I make an amends, I do if I need to, but for the most part, on a day-to-day basis, I own how my day is going to go and my life's going to go because I'm
Yeah.
deciding. So
Yeah. That it feels so good to be able to choose, right? Because when I was drunk, I didn't get to choose. Like I started drinking and it was just all downhill from there. And whatever, and that could mean 1,000 different things, but I definitely wasn't super present in my life. I was functioning at about 30% physically, mentally, emotionally. My emotional growth for sure was stunted, so where I was older in years, I was really a teenager emotionally. And yeah, I didn't have any choice because I drank, which just set the domino effect of all these other things. And as a sober person, I get to choose. I get to be intentional about what I have in my life and who I have in my life and how I spend my time. I get to choose all of those things. Yeah, that's so good.
definitely good. And I think once you get to that point, then the obsession of alcohol goes away. And that is the other best thing about being sober. I don't have to worry about anything other than eating food and drinking water. Because I mean, the human body was only intended, I think, to require food and water. And so I'm back to that place where all I have to do is have food and water and maybe some candy once in a while.
I
So
literally was eating candy walking into the gym this morning. I did not feel good about myself, but I did it. I
gotta do what
was
we gotta do.
walking in and I was like, oh, what is this plastic bag in my purse? And I pulled it out and it was a bag of gummies. And I was like, well, I guess I should eat them. So yeah, it happens. Well, Heather, thank you so much for doing this episode with me. I so appreciate you sharing your experience with our listeners for sure. And congratulations on your sobriety. I know it feels so good. And you should be really, really proud of yourself and just continue the journey. It just gets better.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really glad that I was able to talk with you. Hopefully, it will help others out there that are kind of going either starting or maybe way into sobriety for many years to kind of listen and see how to go about thinking and what's helped me to get rid of some of my old ways of thinking because I think that's really the key to all this. So
Yeah,
I really appreciate
definitely.
it.
Thank you.